Alrighty, so we've hopefully taken our tests at this point. You were given a window to get those done, and I hope you did well on them. Of course, I'll let you know if you haven't already checked how you did. I'll put all the grades in the grade book. So we are going to go ahead and get started on our next chapter, which is going to be chapter 9. We're actually skipping 8 because that would have been graphing. If we have time, we'll do some graphing at the end of the year. But we aren't going to spend a ton of time on that because we can't really do paper and pencil graphing. So it's not very easy to do on the computer. So we're going to skip ahead to solving equations. Today's going to be a pretty easy one, just looking at what the zero product property is. So without much more than that, let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be pretty basic day to day, and then we'll work from here with our factoring that we've been doing. So we're going to kind of combine everything, bring it all together. But let's go ahead and get started on that. So our zero product property, remember when any number or value is multiplied by zero, the result is always zero. So we, say, think about it, if I said 5 times zero, if I have a number times zero, I know my answer is zero. Or if I said 3 times, oops, not 3, if I said 0 times 3, there we go, that's what I meant. If I had something else, let's see here if I can get this thing to work, 0 times 3, well, that answer is also still 0. So no matter what, even though we used whole numbers here, because we're multiplying by 0, our answer is always 0. And that is basically our zero product property. That's the rule, that if we have A times B equal to 0, if we have something multiplied together and the answer is 0, then either the first number is 0 or the second number is 0. So the zero product property basically says that if an equation is equal to 0, then it's in its factored form. So these are our factors. And our first step will always be to set both factors equal to 0 because either the first one is equal to 0 or the second one is equal to 0. So what does that look like? So here I've got four examples real quick. These go super fast. These are my factors. So, and they are equal to 0. So we're going to use our zero product property. So either the first factor is equal to 0 or the second factor is equal to 0. And so we can solve by just setting both of these factors equal to 0. So if I wanted to get x by itself, I need to get rid of the 2 in the front. So I would just divide by 2. So that would tell me that 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So I would have x equals 0. Or on my second equation, I would get x by itself. I would add my 3 to the other side. And that way this 3 goes away, and I would have x equals 3. And so we could always check by plugging it back in. If I was to plug in, just to kind of show you, if I did 2 times 0 minus 3, 2 times 0 is 0, and this would be negative 3. So is 0 times negative 3 equal to 0? Yep. And if I wanted to plug in the 3, if I did 2 times 3, plugging in 3 for x, and then 3 minus 3, 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 minus 3 is 0. Is 6 times 0 equal to 0? Yes. So we could check by plugging our numbers back in and seeing if they do in fact equal 0. So then here I have factors a little bit bigger. They're both in parentheses. They're both groups now. So I have x plus 5. That's one factor. I'll set it equal to 0. And I have x minus 4. There's my other factor, and I'll set it equal to 0. And so then we're just trying to solve this. So if I wanted to solve for x, I would subtract 5 in both cases, both sides, so that 5 minus 5 goes away, and 0 minus 5 is just negative 5. Or the other possible chance I have here is if I move my 4 over to the other side so that it goes away, x is equal to 0 plus 4, which is 4. So here are my two possible solutions that make that equation equal to 0. And that's all the zero product property is. So here we have another situation. We have two factors. The math involved in them is a little bit more, but nothing crazy. Here we have 3x minus 5 equals 0, or 2x minus 7 equals 0. And so then we'll solve these. So my first step to figure out what x is to add my 5 over so that it goes away. So 3x, 0 plus 5 equals 5. And then we'll divide by 3. and that gives me my 3's disappear from the front of the x, and I would have x equals, oops, 5. Oh, what happened to my marker there? Here we go, 5 over 3. There's one possible solution. Or we solve the other equation. So we end up with two possible solutions here. We divide by 2, x equals 7/2. And that's because both of these, either of these, if I plugged 5/3 into the first equation, or first factor, that would make that factor a 0, and therefore 0 multiplied by anything is still going to give me 0. Same thing with the second one. If I plug the second solution into the second factor, that would make that factor equal to 0, and then anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So part D is just a little trickier because now we have 3 factors. My handwriting seems to be pretty bad tonight. So with my 3 factors, I have my first factor is just x, and so I will set it equal to 0. And right there, boom, I've got one of my possible answers. If x is 0, 0 times anything else is going to equal 0. But then I have my other 2 factors. I have x minus 5 is equal to 0, or my 2x plus 9 is equal to 0. And so then we would have to solve these. So this one's a nice easy one. I would just add 5. X is all by itself. 5 has gone away, negative 5 and positive 5, and 0 plus 5 is 5. So there's a solution. And then the last one, the last factor, I would have to subtract 9. So 2x, the 9 goes away, 9 minus 9, and 0 minus 9 is negative 9. And then I would have to divide by 2. And that would leave me with a factor of negative 9 over 2. And there's my 3 possible answers because I had 3 possible factors. That's basically all there is to it. I have one more just because there's one more problem type that you're going to see where it says if one solution of the equation is negative 3, what is the other solution? So this is really the same thing. Here's my equation. I have x plus 3. I know it's already equal to 0, so x plus 3 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. Now some of you could probably figure this out without having to do all of the work, but just in case, here I would subtract my 3, so I would have x equals 0 minus 3, or just negative 3. Or we would solve the other one. We would add 2 to get x by itself, so that that negative 2 and positive 2 go away. X equals 2. Well, since we already know that one solution we already have the negative 3, then that means the other solution has to be 2, because that's the other answer that we have. So that's all that is. That's all that they're asking you to do. So hopefully this is not too terrible. So go ahead. The assignment's going to be on quizzes today because there is just, they don't have any that are like this on the Delta Math assignment. So the next, today and tomorrow will be quizzes, and then we'll have a Delta Math hopefully on Friday. So alrighty, good luck, and do what you can.